Step into the Oracle Parlor, a podcast where those interested in witchcraft, psychic abilities, ghosts, and all things paranormal come to sip and spill the magical tea. This parlor is a space to grow by maintaining our curiosity over fear when it comes to the spooky and the paranormal. I'm your host, Jenny, otherwise known as Fantasma Witch. I'm a previous visual storytelling artist from animation, now full-time psychic witch, who is getting her MA in psychology to become a licensed therapist. Every other episode, I will share my paranormal experiences, different witchy experiences on a variety of topics, while other episodes, I will be talking with witchy guests of all backgrounds, from writers to artists to well-known social media witches, so we can learn about their practices and how they grew into their personal power. So get cozy and grab your tea. It's time to get mystical. Hello, my magical friends. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Oracle Parlor podcast. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about our intuition and how sometimes we can feel blocked or disconnected from our intuition. But before we get started, as always, I'm going to say my fun little disclaimer here at the beginning, which is I'm not here to convince you of anything, nor am I here to try to tell you that my way is the only way or my ideas or beliefs are the correct and only one. It's simply not true, especially when it comes to magical, mystical, psychic workings and belief systems. There is no specific right or wrong way. And so, if I say something that does not resonate or agree with you and your personal experiences or beliefs or practices, please note that that is totally fine. And that is absolutely normal. All of this is to say, leave what does not resonate, use what does, use your own discernment, and stick with what feels true for you, my friends. So, the first thing that's important for me to say in regards to this topic is that I personally believe that intuition is innate within every single person. So, what do I mean by intuition is innate? I mean that we are all capable of using and all have intuition, a gut feeling, a gut response, that knowing without knowing why. Suddenly, you just have that feeling that says, I should really text that person, or you know what, I'm going to take a different route to work today. Whatever that may be, that little whisper, that gut sensation. And if you've listened to previous episodes, you have heard me talk about what intuition specifically is and how I relate intuition to psychic skills and psychic abilities. And so when we're talking about intuition being innate, I am also saying that if you hone your intuition into a psychic tool and skill set, that is just an innate ability that you are progressing and honing to be a sharpened blade to be used as a tool for other things, right? Just like being an artist, I used to do art when I was a kid and I worked really hard on it. I took classes, I practiced, and I eventually worked in the industry as an artist. Can all kids grow up to become a professional artist if they choose to? Absolutely, yes. But is someone who can create art as a child going to immediately grow into being a professional if they never work on it or practice it or hone that skill? Maybe, maybe not. So it's the same idea with our psychic skills. Not saying that you have to become a professional psychic if that is something that you are not interested in. You don't have to do that. But this is what I mean by our intuition. It can be honed into a psychic skill, but either way, our intuition, our psychicness, that is a part of us and who we are deep down at our core level. And so when we often will say or hear other people say, I feel disconnected from my intuition. I feel disconnected from my spirit team, my guides, divine. I feel disconnected or I feel blocked. Now, I will even catch myself saying these phrases. I will definitely have moments where I will say, I don't feel connected. I don't feel like I'm tapped in as well as I usually am or could be. And that's perfectly normal and okay. However, I have met some clients who, when they tell me that they feel disconnected from their intuition, they describe it as they believe that they are literally like as if a cord has been cut between them and their intuition, as if their intuition is a separate entity and there is no telephone line between them and their intuition. And I think that this is a really important thing to kind of bring mindful awareness to. And the first thing is to bring that mindful awareness to the fact that seeing intuition, seeing our psychic skills and abilities as a separate thing outside of ourselves is something that I believe a lot of us need to stop doing if we're doing that. We need to unlearn that idea that intuition is this other thing. Because again, intuition is it's us. It's part of us. It's who we are. It's our deep down, our gut feeling, our knowing, right? It's not this other separate entity or thing that we have to connect to. It's just something within us that we are bringing internal awareness, conscious awareness. Our conscious mind is becoming aware of it. And so it's less about connecting to something else and more about listening within and bringing, again, that mindful awareness to within. It's the same way if you meditate, if you consider the idea in meditation of bringing awareness to the breath during meditation. It doesn't mean that the breath is outside of you. It doesn't mean that your breathing is occurring anywhere else but within you. You're just noticing. You're noticing your inhaling and exhaling, the expanse and the fall of your chest as you take those breaths in meditation. You're bringing that mindful awareness to the feelings, to the sensations, to allow yourself to really hone in on that sensation in the body. And that's the same with intuition. We're not focusing on connecting to something outside of ourselves as much as we are going within and saying, oh, let me listen in. Let me bring awareness within. Let me tap into myself and my own knowing. So that's one of the first things that I feel like is really important when we're talking about this idea of feeling disconnected from our intuition, is that it's not separate. It is us. Now, the next part of that comes with the idea of this kind of cord that I was talking about earlier, that the telephone line between you and your intuition, even if you do consider it as internal and not separate, but for some reason you feel like the cord is tangled and knotted or maybe even cut, and now you're not receiving phone calls from within. You're not receiving those intuitive pings, those intuitive messages in the same way, if at all, is how it can feel, right? But rather than seeing it as a cord that's been cut, or oftentimes people describe it as a block or a wall. It's a good idea to try to reframe it, to think of it more like static, right? So, for example, if we continue with the telephone, we're talking corded old telephones here, so hopefully you're following me when I'm talking about this. But when we're talking about like a corded telephone and the cord is cut, the idea when we're using this kind of metaphor or analogy is that takes a lot of work to repair. That takes a lot of effort to repair. When the cord is cut, that is pretty damaging. Versus static. If you get interference on a phone call, you're still receiving the phone call. It's just sometimes it's a little fuzzy, sometimes it's just a little harder to hear what's coming through the phone and what's on the other side of that line. And it doesn't mean that it's not coming through at all anymore because there's static. It just means you need to be like, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Can you repeat that? It's literally asking your intuition, asking your spirit team, whatever you want to refer to them as. I'm sorry, I didn't receive the message. Could you send it again? I'm sorry, I feel like there's some interference. I didn't quite get that. Even if you're not like actively in the moment trying to give yourself a reading or give somebody else a reading, and you just feel like in general that there's that uncomfortable static of, it seems really silent right now. Usually I get a lot of intuitive pings, but right now things are really still, things are really silent. Just tap in. Just say, hey, whether you're talking to your intuition, yourself, your higher self, your spirit team, your guides, whatever feels good and comfortable for you, just checking in and being like, hey, it's a bit quiet right now and it feels really uncomfortable. Acknowledge it. I think the first step is just to acknowledge it and say, this is where I am right now. This is how it feels for me right now. It doesn't feel great. I'm not comfortable with it, and that's okay. Because unlike a phone getting the cord cut, and then we have to go on a whole journey of fixing the cord and buying a new one and finding out what the problem was and how it got cut to begin with. You like this analogy? Rather than that, with static, it's, well, I just have to wait till the interference has passed. That's all. So if we're reframing it as less permanent or damaging or time consuming to try to fix the problem, because that's the key here, right? We're not trying to fix the problem. We are acknowledging that there is static and interference, that it's hard for us to connect in at this moment, and that we just need to be patient and allow the static to be there to cause the discomfort of not feeling as easily in the flow with our intuition and our psychic skills and abilities, and just say, okay, well, this is where I am right now. There's a bit of interference, and I will do my best to sit with this, to be patient, to allow the moment to pass, and to have faith that the moment will pass, and I will come out on the other side with much more clarity and much more in alignment with myself and how maybe I used to feel more in flow or will feel even more in flow. But the reason why I speak on all of this is because I do meet a lot of clients who have this concern that there's this othering happening between them and their psychic skills and abilities and their intuition, and that there's a fear that there's this quote that I will use here and speak on a little bit, but there's a genuine fear within a lot of my clients and people that I consult in regards to psychic workings, which is if you don't use it, you lose it. And therefore, if you are blocked, it means you're not using it and then you're losing it as more and more time goes on. And I have a very, very uh I have personal beef. I have personal beef with this idea of use it or lose it. I'm not sure if I've talked about it on the podcast before, which would be very surprising if that was the case. But this idea of use it or lose it when it comes to our psychic skills, I think is uh, quite damaging. And not only that, but it is a bit of an ableist idea because it's originates, as far as I understand this saying and how it's commonly used in America here. So if you're not listening in America, but is this idea of like working out. So if you don't use your muscles, you're going to lose your muscles and your muscle mass. The more mass you build, you have to maintain it, maintain it, maintain it. And I always like to encourage people, again, I'm all about shifting the mindset and not seeing it as such a permanent or heavy or damaging or super detrimental thing. So instead of seeing it as a use it or lose it situation, it's more like, you know, riding a bike is the one I like to use. If you learned how to ride a bike when you were a kid, you learned how to ride a bike, fantastic. You haven't ridden a bike in 20 years, it may take you a few tries getting back on the bike, but you will get back on the bike and eventually it will come back to you. It is second nature to you, and you're deep down, you know how to do it. You've done it before. It just takes time to get back into it. That's more in alignment with me than the use it or lose it idea. Because, yes, using your intuition and honing it to be this magical psychic wand or blade, uh, that's one thing. To build the skill set, to build the vocabulary in order to be able to use it in a way that is more refined, but that refined psychic blade doesn't just suddenly disappear when when you're no longer tapped in, no longer using it, even if it's been a long time. It doesn't mean that it just poof vanish and then you have to start from square one. It's no, the blade is there, but maybe it's a little dull and you have to work on it a little bit to sharpen it again. But it's not like you're making it from scratch. It's not like, again, it's not like you're working from thin air, from nothing. And so the reason I bring up is because, again, there's this common fear that I notice where it's if I'm disconnected and blocked from my intuition and my psychic abilities, then that means I'm not using my psychic abilities, which means I'm slowly losing my psychic abilities. And so you can see how this creates a really unhealthy pattern and an unhealthy way of thinking that leads to this kind of spiraling rumination of despair, which is what we want to avoid. And so this is why I really wanted to speak on this, is because I want to remind everybody, and if this isn't a reminder, then I wanted to share with everyone that you can't lose something that is innately within you. You cannot be disconnected from something that is innately within you. It may feel like it, but that's not the factual matter of it. It's still there. And when I say factual, like I said, we're not talking about evidential, scientific, right? Right. This is belief. This is, yes, we've already done the disclaimer. But try to keep that in mind, listener, that even if you have moments of doubt, of worry, of that disconnected block, to take a breath and say, okay, I'm having that static interference. It will pass. My skills and abilities are not going to vanish. They're not going to diminish. And it's okay for me to take a little bit of a break because sometimes when this happens, not all the times, sometimes this can be an invitation from the universe to get more into our mundane lives. Sometimes it's the universe saying, hey, you've been really up here in the astral cooking, and now we want you to take a nap in the mundane and just do, maybe literally take a nap, or maybe just rest and be present in the physical world for a bit rather than the magical astral realms. So, seeing this as more of an invitation for rest, seeing it as an invitation for focusing on the mundane before replenishing the batteries internally, and then getting back out there and tapping back into your psychic flow and that psychic energy, that can be really helpful as well because it can be, again, it can be so easy to slip into this thinking of I'm not psychic anymore. What happened to my psychic my psychic powers? I hate saying that. It always makes you think of X-Men, but you get the idea. Again, they don't vanish, but it can feel very frustrating. It can feel very frustrating in the moment when we are faced with the silence rather than the fun, exciting moments of intuitive pings. This also goes for, and because I keep referencing more like intuition and psychic as a whole, but this can be anything. If you are someone who is highly sensitive to energies, or you're empathic and can sense other people's emotions, or you have mediumship abilities where maybe you can see, sense spirits, and then suddenly you feel like you're not having those experiences off the cuff anymore, where it's not just like randomly happening to you and it's just there and it's just happening around you and you're just noticing it like, oh wow, I'm really picking up on this person's emotions, or oh wow, I'm picking up on the energy of someone who passed away in this restaurant, or oh wow, I'm really sensing the vibe within this home that I just walked into. Maybe if you're one of those people and then suddenly you're noticing that everything seems to go really quiet, it can be really uncomfortable if you're used to having these things happen, right? It's funny because I often hear people talking about the reverse of when starting out, and this is totally normal when starting out. When I say starting out, like when you start bringing awareness to these moments of, oh my gosh, I'm having these psychic intuitive moments. It can be really scary at first for some people because for some people they may question, am I am I losing my mind here? Am I making things up? Is this just my imagination? What's going on? And so it's really funny how I don't hear the reverse talked about, which is once we've gotten to a point where we, fully embrace and accept and dive deep into this skill set and bring that mindful awareness to it, and we live a life where quite frequently, maybe not every day, but at least a few times a week, if not once a week, we have some sort of experience and we're just like, oh yeah, that's just a psychic ping. That's just, yeah, there's a spirit over there. And then when it suddenly goes quiet, it's like the reverse of when we're starting out, where having the experience was like uncomfortable. Now it's the reverse where not having the experience becomes uncomfortable, where then we start to question ourselves, our abilities, and everything in between. And so just the fact of looking at this as a reversal, whether you are someone who finds yourself to be someone who is more practiced as a psychic or not, let this be a reminder that when you start getting into a psychic flow state and you start receiving a lot of information on a psychic level, if you notice a temporary, and that's the key word, temporary, if you notice this pause and this stillness and this quietness that starts to happen, that's absolutely normal. I guarantee you a lot of other professional working psychics also experience that. A lot of other intuitives experience that. The difference is being able to bring that awareness to, oh, I'm having a still moment. And it doesn't mean that we can't tap into it when we need it, because there's a difference between I'm giving somebody a reading and I'm able to easily give this person the message and the guidance they receive, even though in my day-to-day life, I'm not having the intuitive pings, I'm not having the interactions with spirits, I'm not having these out of nowhere insights. The readings, the connections between myself and clients or myself and for myself in a reading, that doesn't go away, even though I may feel like it's not quite the same flow. And that's something to remember is even if we don't feel like we're having the same intimate ease and flow in the day to day, that doesn't mean that we're not able to at all tap in. It may just, again, be that static. That's the difference when we're sitting down, giving ourselves or somebody else a reading, when we are in these staticky moments of unable to clearly receive with ease, we're still doing our best and we're still able to navigate through that foggy, staticky um, noise that's kind of disrupting the signal to still receive. But maybe we receive slightly differently when we're having these staticky moments, right? Maybe it's not as clear. Maybe we typically get a lot of visuals or a lot of like inner ear clairaudience stuff when we're in readings, but in these moments of static, maybe it's really, really silent. And maybe it's a whisper. It's still a whisper nonetheless. It just means we have to listen and feel into it a lot harder than on a quote unquote on a good day when we're in the flow and it's just there. We don't even have to work for it. It's just there. And again, this isn't something I hear a lot of people talk about. And this is something that I was experiencing this week. And I thought this would be a good thing to talk about is just that reminder of like, if you have to take a break or you have to use more effort to really listen to and tap into, it doesn't mean that it's completely gone. It's a little more effort. I was talking to my partner about this earlier today, and my partner also works as an artist for the animation and the game industry. And my partner likened it to art, much like I do, with a lot of these analogies. But my partner said, if anybody here is an artist, you may understand this as well. It's sort of like when you kind of are having an art block, right? So you go from being inspired, listening to your favorite albums or doing whatever, and easily being able to create art and draw and do what you need to do. And then suddenly you lack the creative inspiration. And you try to draw, and it's really, really hard to draw. And maybe you have an idea for what you want to draw, but when you try to draw it, it doesn't really come out right. And it feels like you're fighting yourself, even though your artistic skills didn't go anywhere. Your creativity didn't go anywhere. You still know how to draw. It just means that you're having a difficult time kind of bringing through that creative process. And it's really funny. Maybe one day I will do, I know we've talked about it a little bit before, but talk a bit more in depth about how art is really just channeling. It's very similar to psychic work. I've talked about it a lot on the podcast, but I feel like I could talk forever about it. But, anyways, this idea is, again, it doesn't go anywhere. It's still there. It's just frustrating when it does happen. So, reminding yourself and not to get frustrated about it, not to get hung up on it is really important. Not to give in to that frustration and upset that may come up when it happens, but instead saying, okay, I need to walk away from this from a little bit, or maybe I need to focus in a little bit more to try to receive. And if not, and I just find myself getting more frustrated, then I'll take a break. That's more what we want to aim for when we find that we're having these moments. Going back to that idea, though, of the kind of use it or lose it, or as I was just saying with art, where it doesn't really disappear, I also wanted to kind of give you all a little bit of my own personal experience in regards to this and why I so disagree with this getting disconnected, and if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's, you know, if you've listened to the podcast before, if you've listened to my episode on growing up in a haunted house, then you know that I had a lot of experiences when I was a kid. So I psychically sensed a lot of spirits. I was very sensitive to other people's energies. I actually used to be able to see auras at one point a lot better than I can now. I can't really do it now because I haven't honed that skill, and that is what I want to talk about. For example, when I'm talking about auras, I used to be able to do it as a kid. I can't really do it anymore. Is that because I didn't use that ability and therefore I lost it? No, it's because I didn't practice to hone it and therefore it didn't go anywhere. And so if I want to see auras, I can, but I have to really concentrate. And it takes a bit of effort. As a kid, it was more like I would be sitting in the classroom and I would be looking at the teacher, and I thought I used to zone out. And as an adult, I realize now that it wasn't just zoning out, it was actually seeing the aura of the teacher or the other students, depending on who I was looking at. And so because I haven't honed that skill, if I want to see auras, I have to focus a bit more. I have to concentrate. And again, it's like riding a bike. I can still do it, but it's not something I've practiced or honed. And therefore, as a kid where it was just like, well, I'm just going to see it because I'm bored and I can, why not? As an adult, I have to work harder because I haven't ridden that bike in 20 years. But if I worked on it and I practiced it, and if I actually focus on it, yeah, I can do it. It just takes a little effort and a bit more time. A better example would be as a kid, I also had a lot of experiences sensing and seeing, more specifically, spirits. And it was something that would happen unexpectedly. It wasn't constant, but it did happen quite a bit. And I turned my senses to a lot of these things off at a certain point in my life, which I believe I've talked about on the podcast before. And that doesn't mean that I completely lost it. Obviously, I'm a medium today. That is something I do, and I still see and sense spirits when I go out and about. Not every day, but often, yes, especially if I'm bringing more awareness to it. So the thing is, that the ability to do that had always been there. And it was, again, this innate thing that I could do. But because I chose to kind of put it in a box and lock it away for a bit, I wasn't actively engaging and honing that. I was ignoring it. I was putting it away. I put it on a shelf. Again, the box on the shelf does not disappear, my friends. It just waits for us to blow the dust off of it and crack it open. And that is what I chose to do many years later as an adult. I decided to specifically pull the box of spooky ghosts that I don't ever want to see or experience because it scared the crap out of me. I pulled that box off the shelf, my friends, and I opened it back up. It didn't go anywhere. It was still there. And as soon as it was cracked open, it was cracked open. And I could sense these spirits again quite easily, to the point that it was quite shocking. I'm not going to lie. Um, as soon as I started opening up myself to the possibility of sensing and seeing spirits again. It was happening more frequently, I feel like, than even when I was a kid, because I was more aware and open and not as scared as I was when I was little. And then I took the efforts to actually hone that ability to the point that now I can use it as a tool when I do mediumship sessions. So again, it didn't disappear. I wasn't disconnected from it. It was just waiting for me to be able to tap back in at some point. And whether or not we've had experiences or you have had experiences when you were younger at any point in your life, it doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to do these things. Sometimes we don't realize that we have the ability to do these things until we are mindfully present of it and it presents itself to us. So again, it doesn't mean that we're disconnected from our intuition. It means that we're being mindful. And when we experience these blocks or disconnected feelings of, well, I used to sense this and now I don't. Again, thinking of it like that muddied signal or thinking of it as the box on the shelf rather than something completely separate that's been lost or cannot be restored is going to be really, really helpful if you are on your own intuitive developmental journey. So, my friends, I present this to you as an opportunity to bring mindful awareness within. Next time you are sensing that frustration of a block or a disconnect from intuition, try to think of it again as not being separate. And more importantly, bring your mindful awareness back to yourself so you can really listen and hone in to the whisper within that still exists. Because just again, just because we have static over the phone doesn't mean that there isn't a signal still coming through. It just means we have to kind of push past the static in order to really hear what's happening. And maybe we're going through a tunnel, and then when we get out from the tunnel, suddenly we have signal again. So be patient, be kind to yourself, and know that it's not something separate from you. It's not something that will disappear. And this is totally normal. From your most experienced psychics to your most beginner tapping into that intuitive nature. It is normal in the process of things. Because, like I was saying earlier, just like an artist, you're not going to have 100% good artistic, creative, inspired days every single day. You're going to have moments where you're going to feel like you're hitting your head against a wall, and that is normal. And if anything, those moments of feeling like you're hitting your head against the wall is usually a positive sign. And I know you may be thinking, how is that a positive sign? That's just so frustrating. True, true, it is frustrating, but it's a sign that you're growing. It's a sign that you're stepping into a new level, possibly. And using this example of art still, I often found that when I was having these moments of struggle with drawing, I usually, when I would come back to it and eventually would get past that art block, as I call it, as a lot, you may hear a lot of artists say that art block. Once I've gotten past the art block, I felt like the things that I used to struggle with on like a specific drawing, especially if I'm blocked creatively, all of a sudden it was a lot easier to figure out. It was a lot easier to tap into. It was a lot easier to channel. And then it was like, oh, I didn't have this much clarity on how to move through this before, but now I do. And so in that way, it feels like a tiny level up. It's like, ooh, you just got 3 bonus points. It may not be a lot. Sometimes it's a big leap. Sometimes it's a small one. But if you begin to look at these pauses and these moments of static as a possible moment for rest and of a possible moment of leveling up once you're able to go back within that flow, these moments become a lot less frustrating. So, again, my friends, I hope that this episode brought you some wonderful insights in some way. Let me know in the comments. Let me know through just liking the episode and sharing with others. I hope you all have a wonderful, magical day, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me in the parlor for this episode. If you want more psychic magical tips, make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasma Witch. FANTASMAWITCH. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon, where I have a Discord community. I do Q&As, live classes, workshops, and more. To book a reading or consultation directly with me, you can go to my website, www.phantasmawitch.com. All of these links can be found in the episode description. And please, if you enjoyed this show, make sure you go leave a rating, leave a review, share it with others. It really helps the show to reach new listeners if you take a moment to do that, and it is sincerely appreciated. Shout out to the artist Cat Lines, who helped me to redesign the podcast logo to the beautiful magical teacup you see today. See you, mystical friends, in the parlor next time.